Let me start with a strange question. What if overthinking isn't a sign that your brain is thinking too much, but a sign that your brain is trying really hard to protect you? Think about it. The same brain that helped humans survive predators, navigate uncertainty, and build civilizations is the same brain that keeps you up at 2 a.m. replaying a conversation from 6 hours ago. Why did I say that? Did that sound weird? What if they misunderstood me? And the strange part is, the more you think about it, the less clear everything becomes. So today we're exploring one of the strangest contradictions of the human mind. Why the brain that's designed to solve problems is sometimes the thing that's creating them. Let's make this concrete. Imagine someone named Alex. Alex has a decision to make. A new opportunity appears. A project, a move, a conversation about something important. At first, the reaction is excitement, but within minutes, the mind starts running simulations. What if this fails? What if I embarrass myself? What if this closes other opportunities? The brain opens one tab, then another, then another. Soon, Alex isn't exploring opportunity anymore. Alex is exploring every possible future where everything goes wrong. Hours pass, maybe even days. Nothing moves. And here's the strange part. Alex believes that all this thinking is helping, but the thinking isn't producing more clarity. It's producing more uncertainty. Eventually, the opportunity passes, not because it was the wrong choice, but because overthinking made it feel impossible. If this sounds familiar, it's because the brain is trying to solve a problem that it was never designed to solve perfectly, predicting the future before participating in it. Before we go further, here's the key idea behind this entire episode. Overthinking begins when the brain mistakes uncertainty for danger. When uncertainty appears, the brain activates its threat detection systems. From that moment on, the mind starts trying to solve a problem that might actually not exist. Overthinking feels responsible. It feels like preparation. It feels like intelligence. But most of the time, it's something else entirely. So the mind tells itself, if I just think about this long enough, I'll finally feel certain. But certainty almost never arrives. Instead, the brain creates more simulations, more scenarios, more loops, until you're no longer thinking to solve the problem. You're thinking to escape the discomfort of not knowing. And that's where the trap begins. From the brain's perspective, this behavior actually makes a lot of sense. Three systems quietly create this loop. The amygdala flags uncertainty as potential danger. The prefrontal cortex responds by running simulations. What if this happens? What if this goes wrong? What if I miss something important? But the prefrontal cortex can simulate nearly infinite futures. So instead of solving the problem, it keeps generating possibilities. At the same time, the default mode network activates when the mind turns inward. This network replays memories, imagines the future, and evaluates social situations. When anxiety is present, it creates rumination loops. The brain keeps revisiting the same thoughts, hoping repetition will produce clarity. But repetition rarely produces clarity. It usually produces mental noise. After all, as Rita Mae Brown wrote in Sudden Death, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. It isn't a psychiatric definition. It's an observation about human behavior. When we repeat the same strategies, thinking harder, analyzing longer, replaying the same mental loops, while hoping for different outcomes, the pattern becomes self-defeating. Overthinking often works exactly like this. The mind keeps applying the same tool, more thought, to a problem that actually requires something different: movement, feedback, experience. There's another subtle force behind overthinking: identity. The mind wants to feel intelligent, prepared, in control. Uncertainty threatens the identity. So the brain launches its favorite defense mechanism: analysis. If it can predict everything, it believes it can avoid mistakes. But reality refuses to become perfectly predictable. So the mind thinks harder and harder until thinking itself becomes the cage. Many people eventually notice something surprising. The answers they were desperately trying to think their way to only appear after they stop thinking, during a walk, during a shower, during the quiet moments. Why? Because when the brain relaxes, different networks associated with creativity and insight become active. Instead of forcing answers, the brain reorganizes information in the background. Clarity doesn't come from pressure, it comes from space. So maybe overthinking isn't a failure of intelligence. Maybe it's misplaced trust in thinking itself. Thinking is a powerful tool. The brain can simulate many futures, but it was never meant to simulate all of them before we act. Some questions can't be solved by thinking harder. They can only be answered by moving forward and learning. There's another perspective on overthinking that approaches the same pattern from a different direction. From that lens, overthinking happens when the mind tries to control the outcome of life instead of participating in it. The analytical mind wants guarantees. It wants to know exactly how things will happen before it takes a step. But clarity rarely works that way. One principle from this framework is simple. Act on what excites you the most to the best of your ability with no insistence on the outcome. Overthinking happens when we refuse to move until we feel certain about the future. But certainty is rarely available before action. So instead of asking, what is the perfect decision? Ask a different question. What feels most alive or interesting right now? Then take a small step in that direction. Movement creates feedback, and feedback creates the path. Interestingly, this perspective with neuroscience describe the same pattern from opposite directions. One says the brain is trying to predict the future. The other says the mind is trying to control it. But both point to the same realization. Life becomes clearer when we stop trying to solve it entirely in our heads. There's also an interesting neuroscience connection to the idea of following excitement. In the brain, motivation is strongly influenced by the dopamine system. Dopamine is closely related to anticipation, curiosity, and motivation to explore. When something feels interesting or meaningful, dopamine circuits increase activity. This motivates you to move towards that experience and learn from it. The brain learns best when it interacts with an environment and receives feedback. Curiosity and excitement are signals that guide exploration, so excitement becomes a navigation signal. Not a guarantee of a perfect outcome, but a direction that encourages movement instead of paralysis. And movement is exactly what breaks the cycle of overthinking. Next time you catch yourself overthinking, try this simple shift. Instead of asking, what is the perfect decision? Ask, what is the smallest step I can take to learn something? This moves the brain from prediction mode into exploration mode. Action creates feedback. Feedback creates clarity. And clarity almost arrives faster through experience than through analysis. Remember Alex from earlier? The opportunity Alex was analyzing for days might have worked. It might not have. But the real cost of overthinking isn't the wrong decision. It's never discovering what might have happened. Your brain isn't broken. It's trying to protect you from uncertainty. But sometimes protection becomes overprotection. And the strange contradiction of being human is this. The mind that tries to keep us safe from uncertainty is sometimes the same mind that keeps us stuck. Learning how to think is important, but learning when to stop thinking may be a deeper skill, because clarity often begins exactly where overthinking ends.